Good morning, everyone. Today we'll be discussing about poisoning in children. Children, as you know, are exploratory in nature. They're very curious and they want to explore their world with all the senses, including taste. Poisoning patterns change according to age group, the type of exposure, and the nature of dose of the poison. As the children are very inquisitive in nature, and as a toddler, they want to put everything in their mouth. So mouthing is there at that time, and they're usually unaware of any consequences. Certain substances can be toxic if the child swallows, inhales, or some substances are even absorbed through the skin. Poison is a substance that produces ill health or death by its constitutional or local effects or by both. It does so by altering the cell structure and function. The poisoning occurs when any substance interferes with normal body functions. Some can be swallowed, they are ingested poisons. Some poison substances are inhaled. Some poison substances are injected. Some are even absorbed through the skin. The branch of medicine, as you know, which deals with the detection of poison, the symptomatology of various poisons, and the treatment of poisons is known as toxicology. As the children are very inquisitive in nature and they are unaware of all the consequences, there are certain circumstances which causes poisoning. Most of the poisoning in children are accidental. Whatever they get in their hand, they usually put in the mouth. So most of the poisoning are accidental, and this accidental poisoning is more common. Half of the poisoning occurs in children less than 5 years of age. There are also some poisons which are deliberate. Deliberate poisonings can be divided into two. One is suicidal. Most commonly it is seen in adolescents. Second is homicidal. Homicidal poisoning usually come across in case of abuse, child abuse, battered baby syndrome. In these things we come across homicidal poisoning. In accidental poisoning, the children are unaware of what they're consuming. They're unaware of the consequences. Usually put it in the mouth and they'll end up in trouble. But in case of adolescents, they are more aware of the consequences of their actions. But because of the peer pressure, because of risk-taking behavior, because of some depression, will lead them to misuse the drugs. It can be some illicit drugs, it can be alcohol, and it leads to some fatality in children. The poisoning can also occur as a consequence of dosage error. You prescribe something, or even though you have told something properly, they misunderstand it and consume more. Dosage error. Some poisoning also occur in case of recreational use. Not only these, some poison will also occur because of environmental. So they call environmental poisoning. The most common poisoning which we usually come across in a day-to-day practice is poisoning because of cleaning products. The children usually are very inquisitive. They want to explore their surroundings. They go to the kitchen, they go to the bathroom, they see what is in the cupboards and everything. So it can be the usual poisoning which you come across is because of cleaning products. We have seen poisoning because of bleaching powder, because of a cleaning agent, Lysol, washing powder, detergent powders. So these are the common household products which are easily within the reach of children, which they consume. When I was working in my previous place, we actually came across a child where The parents bought the child with poisoning. The child was extremely irritable, crying. The parents had bought the bottle which the child had consumed. The bottle was the cleaning agent. It's not a cleaning agent, it's a beauty product which is used by females. The beauty, which the child what the child had consumed was the bleach, facial bleach, which is used by females. They had actually The mother had actually kept it in the drawer or something, or on the table. The child had consumed that. When we actually smelled it, it was so pungent, it was so caustic, it was just so irritating to even smell it. Just imagine the plight of the child when the child had actually consumed it. So when we went ahead and did endoscopy, there was ulcer present in the esophagus. The child had to be kept for nil by mouth for almost 4 weeks for the ulcer to heal. Imagine a child who's not able to eat anything, who's not allowed to eat anything for 4 weeks, for a month, even though the child wants to eat. So it's so heartbreaking for the parents and for us to see. Even the child wants to eat something, you prevent it, because if you just don't treat it, the ulcer can either lead to eschar and stricture. So the child could have landed up in esophageal stricture. So there also poisoning also occurs because of chemicals used for beauty and personal care. It can be nail polish remover, any bleaching agent, such things. Some poisoning also occurs due to metals. Can metal cause poisoning in children? Can be mercury. Where is mercury present? So it's present in thermometers. Not the digital one, the previous one which was being used. So the normal thermometers, mercury is present. It can be caused by lead. As you have seen, the children have the habit of behavioral disorders like pica. They tend to eat the paint. So lead is present in paint. Lead is also present in batteries. So the batteries, with the button batteries which you usually see in toys, or it can be cell phone battery, or it can be AA or a AAA battery. So lead is present in them. Not only lead, they also contain cadmium and lithium, which are too dangerous for the child. And apart from this, poisoning can also occur because of contaminated food. So contaminated food can also cause poisoning. And other poisoning which we usually see is because of drugs. The medication which we usually prescribe for the child. So if it is around, we have seen the child come with paracetamol poisoning. So a paracetamol syrup is there. The child would have consumed the whole bottle. So paracetamol poisoning, cough syrup poisoning, and also some kids, they consume the medication which are meant for adults. Someone in the house, maybe an elderly person, the grandfather, or someone who's a known antihypertensive, who's a known diabetic, their drugs. So the child would have consumed that. So the child will come with the adverse effects of those drugs. Other poisoning which we usually see is because of pesticides. So the most common, so in case of rural areas, the pesticides are usually used for the farm or the gardening or some place. So the child would have consumed the pesticides. But the pesticide poisoning we usually see as a result of, in adolescents and older age group, as a suicide. The second thing which we commonly come across is because of kerosene poisoning. So as you know, some kerosene are usually colorless, and most of them they usually keep it in bottles, plastic bottles. More often they're usually the drinking water bottle. So the child gets confused for water or something and consumes it. And here, as you see, the kerosene has been stored in a Coca-Cola bottle, and it is blue in color. The kids, they usually love colors. So whenever they see some colorful liquid present in a bottle, the urge to have it or drink it is more. They have it and they'll end up in hospital. These are hydrocarbons. They have major effects on your lungs. So chemical pneumonitis. So these are the common poisonings which we come across in children. And when when a case of poisoning lands up, if your first and foremost thing is take a proper history, treat the child, do the first aid, and never forget to register a medico legal case. So all poisoning, irrespective of accidental or intentional, so it can be a suicidal, it can be homicidal, it can be accidental, but any poisoning has to be registered as medico legal case. So first and foremost is, when you get a case, you should try your best to identify the product ingested. So always insist on the parents to get the containers or bottle in which it was stored to be bought. So most of the time it gives an evidence to what has been consumed. Next is, if it is not available, ask them to describe the toxin. It can be liquid, it can be solid, it can be a paste or a semi-solid. Ask them to describe the toxin. If they do remember, or if they get a bottle, see what is the product name, what is the brand, what is the generic name, what are the chemical composition, ingredients, and what is the concentration of it. Ask them how much the child has consumed. If it's very little, so mostly it might not cause any problem. So ask what is the quantity which has been consumed. Most often we don't know what is the quantity. So in such case, ask them how much is remaining in the bottle, or how much is remaining in the container. How much was present initially? Was the bottle full or not? If it in case of tablets or some medication, count the number of remaining tablets. Ask them how much was the tablet full. See how many tablets are remaining. When did the child consume? So it's very important to understand when how much time has been elapsed. So very often we don't know when did the child consume. So the child will not tell that I'm consuming this and going to consume. Child will consume at some point of time. Only when the symptoms start appearing, the parents come to the hospital. So there is some time lapse. So see this time lapse. So what is the time of exposure? What is the time lapse? It is very important because it influences your decision regarding diagnostic and your therapeutic interventions. See the nature and progression of symptoms. What symptom appeared first? Then what happened? What is the severity of the symptoms as the time is going on? Also, it is important to ask a detailed history whether such things have happened before. You want to know whether it's the first time the child has consumed so much, or the child has been consuming little by little. So is it a chronic use, or is it a first time? Has any intervention been done now? Especially in case of rural and semi-rural areas, they usually go for some local practitioner, may not be a doctor, some quack. They would have done something. So when you start your treatment, it will have adverse effects. So ask whether any interventions have been done till now. So these are very important histories which is important. So you should remember, most pediatric injections are usually accidental and are minimally toxic. And what makes it very difficult to treat these children are, the children, you should remember, are not miniature adults. Their physiology is not well developed. The substance which they have consumed is too much for their body surface area. And because the physiology is not so well developed, you don't know what a particular agent will have the kinetics and dynamics in the body. And most of the toddlers, this speech is not even developed, so they can't tell what is happening, what are they feeling. So they come with some unexplained signs and symptoms. As a parent and as a doctor, it is your responsibility to find out what is happening with the child and to treat the child. So that makes it very difficult in case of the treatment of poisoning in children. So when you get a patient, undress the patient completely. See if any skin lesions, skin manifestations are there. Check the clothing for any objects or substances. If any particular smell is there. Examine the skin completely, which includes your mucous membrane. Next important thing. So the four important things which you'll have to do while examining a case of poisoning is take a complete and a detailed history, because history will tell you what the child has exactly consumed. So your eyes should be open. You should take all possible circumstances, all possible relevant things into account. Examine the child completely, including the mucous membrane, the skin examination, everything. Look at the manifestation of the child. So these certain manifestations will give you the clue to the diagnosis, what the child might have consumed. Some poisoning will cause increased sympathetic activity. Some poisoning will cause increased parasympathetic activity. So see that. So analysis. So analysis of your symptoms as well as the analysis of your blood reports is very important. Important thing is treat the patient and not the poison. So if you're not able to come to a conclusion what the child is consuming, don't run behind what the child is consuming. First treat the patient. You have the patient in front of you. He's having some symptoms. Treat the symptoms properly. Assessment triangle, ABCD. We'll come to it shortly. So pediatric assessment triangle is nothing but, so you see the appearance of the child. So appearance, if the child is interactive, is the child consolable, how is the speech of the child. So if these are normal, so fairly child is hemodynamically stable. Look at work of breathing. Is the breathing normal? Normal is regular breathing. Or is there any gasping respiration, any retractions, any nasal flaring? Check for the circulation of skin, whether any pallor is there, any mottling is there, cyanosis is there. ABCD is your airway, breathing, circulation. So how is the airway? Airway is patent or not? Breathing. If any secretions is there, clear the secretions. If breathing is not proper, give some oxygen. Circulation. See if the child is in shock. Okay. So these are the things which you'll have to look at. So there is something called as toxidrome. Toxidrome is nothing but a combination of symptoms. A combination of symptoms which is characteristically seen in certain poisonings. So certain poison will give rise to a group of symptoms. So this group of symptom and the poisoning put together is called as a toxidrome. So this helps you to find out what the child might have possibly consumed. So this you might have heard in your pharmacology. The anticholinergics. If poisoning, you come across mad as a hatter, red as a beet, dry as a bone, hot as hair, blind as bat. So it's a mnemonic. Blind as bat is there's meiosis, increased sympathetic activity, flushing, delirium. So these things will be seen. So in anticholinergics, so the CNS manifestations are usually agitations, hallucination, coma. So agitation and hallucination. So that's called as mad as hatter. So circulation. And so in circulation, so there can be tachycardia, arrhythmias, hypertension, flushing. So that is called as red as beet. The skin is dry and flushed. So dry as a bone, blind as bat. Okay. So these are the things which you come across in anticholinergic toxidrome. So anticholinergic toxidrome is usually seen in tricyclic antidepressants, the depressant which is usually given. So someone might have had overdose of depressants, so you come across such thing. In case of dhatura poisoning, atropa belladonna, so mushroom poisoning, these are the poisoning which you come across this anticholinergic toxidrome. Okay. So the other one which we come across is caustics. Caustic is nothing but it can be severe acid or alkali. The acids, what they cause when they consume, they cause coagulation necrosis of your mucous membrane, the tongue, esophagus, buccal mucosa, pharynx, esophagus, and gastric mucosa. They cause coagulation, necrosis, and stomach injury. So it can be many acids, say it can be sulfuric acid, it can be nitric acid, anything. Alkali. So in severe alkali can also cause liquefaction necrosis and oropharyngeal esophageal injury. So alkali are sodium hydroxide. So these chemicals, so it is not that the particular chemical is available. So most of the products which are used, it can be personal products, it can be a cleaning agent. So these things will contain these acids or alkalis. So these causes such injuries in case of children. So the other one which we come across is opiate or clonidine. What they cause is this, as you know, clonidine is a antihypertensive drugs which is used in case of hypertension emergencies. So when it is consumed in a much higher dose, can cause hypotension and bradycardia. Opiates, they cause lethargy, seizure, coma, slowing of respiration, pulmonary edema. So this is your opiate toxidrome. So the next one which we come across is cholinergic toxidrome. Cholinergic is usually your organophosphates. Organophosphates, as you know, are most commonly used as pesticides, so agricultural chemicals. So remember your pharmacology. What is the action of organophosphates poisoning? So they inhibit your acetylcholinesterase. When acetylcholinesterase is inhibited, your acetylcholine increases. When acetylcholine increases, it will give to a range of symptoms like, so the mnemonic is dumbbells, diarrhea, urination, meiosis, bradycardia, increased bronchosecretion, emesis, vomiting, lacrimation, increased salivation. Do you remember what is a drug or antidote given for these? So remember your pharmacology, your organophosphates, they're divided into carbamates and organophosphates. They act on nicotinic and muscarinic receptors which give rise to various things. So okay, so the basic thing which causes, the antidote which is used is atropine and prylidoxime. Also, you have to keep your eyes open for various clinical clues which help you in knowing what the poisoning agent is. So the clinical clues can be in the form of odor. So the odor can give rise to what the patient has been consumed or the poisoning has occurred due to. Bitter almonds. Bitter almonds is seen in cyanide poisoning. Acetone, the breath acetone, is seen in isopropyl alcohol or methanol poisoning. Oil of wintergreen. Oil of wintergreen smell is seen in salicylate poisoning. The final one, garlic odor. Garlic odor, most common. Organophosphorus poisoning, phosphorus poisoning, or arsenic poisoning. Apart from this, there are various skin manifestations which you come across which will help you delineate which poisoning has occurred. Cyanosis. The cyanosis, if you see, should check the saturation first. Check the blood gas first. If there is any discrepancy, it should hint you towards a particular diagnosis. It is because of methemoglobinemia. In case of methemoglobinemia, you'll get that. Red flush. Red flush is seen in carbon monoxide poisoning. Increased sweating is seen in LSD or cocaine. Dry skin is seen in anticholinergic poisoning. Respiration. Respiration is depressed in case of alcohol, opiates, and barbiturates. Kussmaul's breathing is seen in methanol, ethylene glycol, and salicylates. So these are the clinical clues which will help you to know what the poisonous agent is. Next is, how do you treat it? So sometimes you know what the poisoning is, So you do a first aid and give the antidote. The antidote is not present for all the chemicals, only few of them have the antidote. So most of the time the management is supportive or symptomatic management. So first resuscitate the child, stabilize the child. So stabilize the child. So resuscitate the child, ABCD, see the assessment triangle, resuscitation and stabilization. See what the toxic the child has consumed. Next is your therapeutic intervention, to remove the poisoning. The things which are present are decontamination, enhanced elimination of absorbed toxins. We'll see how it is done. Any antidotes if present, give the antidotes. Final and the important thing, supportive care. So how do you eliminate these toxins? Enhanced elimination. Enhanced elimination is you can do in by alkalinization. So many poisoning like sodium barbitol, chloropropamide, salicylates, methanol. In these things, alkalinization of urine has to be done. So for alkalinization of urine, you'll give sodium bicarbonate. When you give sodium bicarbonate, so it will bind with these products and help in elimination of the poison. So it's called as forced diuresis. Okay, it's called as forced diuresis. So some poisoning, so the poisoning, it's already absorbed. It's already absorbed. So you have to remove the toxin which is already absorbed by gut. Okay. So every to remove the parent compound and its metabolites. But you should remember that if at all the toxin has got a very large volume of distribution or a very high molecular weight one, or which is very highly protein bound, then you can't do it through your urine. At that time you have to do a hemodialysis or hemoperfusion. In case of salicylates, lithium, in case of that you'll have to do hemodialysis. So what is supportive care? Cardiopulmonary support. See if there is any loss or any ongoing loss. If there is any electrolyte imbalance, correct that. Fluid support. If the child is in shock, give fluid support. Give inotropic support like dopamine, dobutamine. Give inotropic support. CNS support. If the child is having any seizures, any coma, give anti-epileptics. So that is your CNS support. Renal support. Check for urea creatinine. Most of the poison they cause acute kidney injury. So it's usually pre-renal. So you should take all necessary measures so that the child does not go for intrinsic renal failure, which most of the time is irreversible. The child can land up as a chronic renal failure patient. So institute hemodialysis if it is required. The investigation, what all you can do. So investigations are like, you can do a chest x-ray, an abdominal x-ray. If at all the child has consumed something which is radiopaque. Even some medications are radiopaque. Can you name any? Iron tablets. Iron tablets, if the child has consumed many tablets, iron tablets, if you take an x-ray, you can know the iron tablets in the stomach. Okay. So if at all the child has come within 2 hours, 2 or 3 hours, take the stomach contents, send it for analysis. Check for electrolytes, blood gas, check for serum drug levels. So you should take all necessary measures to prevent and to decrease the absorption. Okay, to decrease the absorption. So what is commonly used, which you might have heard of, is activated charcoal. Activated charcoal. What does activated charcoal do? So in most of the whenever you know what is the poisoning, and if at all there is no contraindication for the usage of activated charcoal, you use it. It is actually safest, and you can see the activated charcoal has some spots where the chemical which is there, which is not yet absorbed into the stomach mucosa, can get attached to the molecules of activated charcoal. It absorbs many toxins, but something cannot be absorbed, like metals, alcohol, petroleum products. They can be absorbed. And sometimes, even if it is there in circulation, it can get back into the mucosa and get absorbed to your activated charcoal. So it reduces the absorption into the bloodstream. The dose is usually 1 to 2 gram per kg. In case of adolescents, it is 50 to 100 grams. Remember, it is ineffective in case of pesticides, hydrocarbons like kerosene, acids, metals, and alcohol. So the other thing which you can do to decrease the absorption is do a gastric lavage. So if the child has come very early, so within 2 hours, do a gastric lavage. Remove the content as much as possible. Remember, it is contraindicated in alkali, hydrocarbon, acids. So if you have a case of kerosene poisoning, never go ahead with the gastric lavage because it is contraindicated. So if the drug is already absorbed, what you can do? If the drug is already absorbed, the next thing which you can do is can diuresis. So try to eliminate the drug from the body, force diuresis. You can give furosemide, you can give more fluids, try to flush out the drugs, flush out the toxins from the body. Second thing is peritoneal dialysis, hemodialysis, plasmapheresis, exchange transfusion. These are usually done if at all the time has lapsed. So say around 6 hours after ingestion. So most of the drugs have already passed through the stomach and your intestine and have been absorbed into the bloodstream. So around 6 hours have passed after ingestion. Then the treatment which you have to institute is forced diuresis, peritoneal dialysis, hemodialysis. Okay. So excretion of acidic compounds like salicylates and barbiturates are enhanced by, as we have seen earlier, by alkalinization of urine. So give sodium bicarbonate. So the acidic compounds combine with the alkali of the sodium bicarbonate, and when the alkalinization of urine occurs, it is excreted from the urine. And not all the poisoning, but some poisonings, some chemicals have an antidote. Some have an antidote. Okay. So what are the specific antidotes? So number of ingestions, some have a specific antidote. Like for organophosphorus poisoning, you've already aware, pralidoxime, atropine. Paracetamol poisoning, N-acetylcysteine. Cyanide poisoning, you can give sodium nitrite, sodium thiosulfate. Opiate poisoning, naloxone. For iron, a chelating agent is used, which is desferrioxamine, deferiprone. In case of methemoglobinemia, methylene blue is used. In case of lead poisoning, you give EDTA. This is very important also for your MCQ's point of view. So these antidotes are very important not only for your clinical practice, for management of a child, but also for your MCQs. So these are the things which you can do. So as we always tell, prevention is better than cure. So always make an attempt to prevent a child from any poisoning. So what you can do from your side? So or if at all any agents is there, you counsel the parents that it has to be kept in a higher place, or the cupboard should always be locked so that it is out of reach for the children. And also many drugs which are being produced now, they come in a child resistant package. At least in Western countries, they come in a child resistant packages. The parent should be aware that the child is very exploratory. The child can put anything into its mouth, so you have to be extra cautious to keep all the chemicals or agents in a safe place which are out of reach of children. So this is some child resistant package which is come. So these bottles cannot be opened easily, and also the packets where tablets are present, if you just press, they'll not come out. There's a peel which is there. Once you remove the peel and then press, Only then you will get the tablets. So these are the common ones which are being produced. The medications, some of the very dangerous medications come with a child resistant package. Some of the many times we don't know what the child has consumed, or we have the product but we don't know the chemical, or we are not aware of what the antidote is, if at all there is an antidote. So most of, even as doctors, we don't know that. Not all the chemicals, we're not chemists, we don't know what is the antidote for a specific chemical. So for that, there's a National Poison Information Center, which is a 24/7 center, National Poison Information Center, which is present in AIMS, which has got a toll free number. Anytime you can just call them, tell what the patient has consumed, and they might be able to tell you if at all there is an antidote present, or what treatment you can institute. If you're not aware of that, what can be instituted. They have a toll free number, with the center is in AIMS. It is National Poison Information Center. Lastly, children act fast, so do poisons. So National Poison Prevention Week. So it's usually done on March last third or fourth week. So you should be very aware that a child, even though healthy, can land up in poisoning. So these are the few assignments. So write a note on management of paracetamol poisoning. Second is management of organophosphorus poisoning, clinical manifestations and management of kerosene poisoning or any hydrocarbon poisoning, prevention of, what are the various steps you can take in prevention of poisoning in children. So these are the first three, especially, and not only important in case of your pediatrics as well as for your medicine. So these are your assignments. Thank you.